This doesn't have that swipey thing, does it?
Here's the Golf 7.2. This, of course, is the updated version of the Golf 7. So you know the whole Golf shtick by now. Amazing quality, very refined, quite expensive. See them everywhere. So what's changed for the Golf 7.2? Well, the bumpers, apparently. The shape of the LEDs, apparently. The front wings, apparently. There are some new wheels and colours in that, and they all get rear LEDs now, and the top level ones get those dancing LEDs like an Audi.
But the main stuff is in here and behind there. There's some new trim bits in that, but what's really important and what you'll really want to talk about is this multimedia system. Now there are 3 different versions you can have, but they're all better integrated into the dashboard than they were. Spend a bit of extra money and you can have one with gesture control, which means that you can change tracks and things by not touching the screen and just doing something like this.
You can spend money on a fancy digital instrument panel, also like an Audi. But every new Golf does get a whole bunch of safety kit, including pedestrian and vehicle collision detection, automatic braking, automatic lane keeping on the motorway, and semi-autonomous driving in start-stop traffic. It even has a system that will stop the car if you've passed out.
But if that does happen in here, it's not going to be because you're overexcited. Driving a Golf is still a bit like having a nice brew. It's comforting and it's lovely and you'll enjoy it over and over again, but it's not something that you'll think about much or get too excited about.
Unless, of course, you buy one of the pimped up versions, which is like adding a big dirty biscuit. So here's the Jaffa Cake version, and here's the chocolate hobnob, and here's the big off wagon wheel. There's even a diet type one if you're that way inclined, and the full rice cake experience.
But most Golfs are still pretty bland. Problem is though, that there's a traffic light in front of us and it'd be weird if I started talking just as I'd stop the car. Problem is though, the bland Golfs have always been able to get away with being bland by virtue of being in a different league to everything else when it comes to quality.
But now, lots of other stuff is catching up. You'll find the same sort of squishy plastics as this in a Peugeot or a Kia or a Hyundai, and they tend to look a bit more exciting with it. Having said that, it is no longer the case that the Golf is much more expensive than everything else, as these starting prices prove.
And the cabin might be showing its age a bit now. We're not quite the slice of middle-class decadence that it once was, but it's still massively competent. The driving position is perfection, basically. The refinement is astounding, and all the controls make sense. It's just one of those cars that's just dead easy to live with. Boring, but easy.
And so to the bit behind there. You of course get the diesel stuff that everybody seems to buy, mainly the 2-litre one with 150 PS's. That returns a respectable 65 miles per gallon, but better still is the 1.6 diesel, which tickles the chin of 70 miles per gallon. However, there's a definite sense that the tide is turning generally against diesels, not least because they're getting hammered by the taxman. Evil But that's okay, because out on the road, diesel is no longer the no-brainer that it once was. That's best demonstrated by the brand new 1.5 litre TSI petrol engine that comes with this update. It has 150 horsepower, but it's a bit quicker than the equivalently powered diesel, while being a lot more refined, and not that far away when it comes to the MPG stuff. In fact, if you're just going around the doors, it's the smallest petrol that we'd probably recommend to you.
It's amazing to think that a 1 litre 3-cylinder petrol could be suited to a car this size and be this refined. The Note 62 time's a bit sucky on paper, but this is one of those cars that performs better IRL than it does on paper. Really quiet when you're going slowly, and when you push it, it sounds better than a 4-cylinder does generally. Listen to this, right? Listen how quiet this thing is. Engine cuts in, nearly nothing.
Now, one thing that's not changed with the Golf is the colossal amount of versions that you can have. Oh yes, and nearly all of them come as either a 3-door, a 5-door, or an estate. And when it comes to that most prosaic of hatchback requirements, space, well, what do you expect other than stunning adequacy? And they're all well equipped, which is a euphemism for I can't be bothered to go through the spec. Nonetheless, you'll see the S models have such niceties as Bluetooth, DAB, and a touchscreen media system. However, they're also on plastic wheel trims. So your starting point's going to want to be SE, whose highlights include alloy wheels, emergency braking, parking sensors, and adaptive cruise control.
And as you would expect, and as is usually the case, the more money you spend, the more stuff you get. It really is that simple. It's easy to lose sight of quite how good this car is actually. It's a 1 litre family hatchback, but the ride and the refinement are almost like a luxury car. It's pretty amazing, really. And in that sense, there's really been no change at all. Like it or not, the Golf is still a class above. The end. Thanks for watching.
Go to honestjohn.co.uk for a more detailed review and for a full 360 view of the interior.
Mustn't have it.